Why is gold suddenly back in the center of global attention? And why are the people with the most power acting like something serious is coming? For years, gold was treated as old-fashioned, boring, even irrelevant in a world obsessed with stocks, tech, and digital money. Yet right now, quietly and without excitement, gold is regaining importance in ways that feel eerily familiar to anyone who studies financial history. Prices are rising, central banks are buying at record levels, and investors who once ignored gold are starting to look at it differently. This is not happening by accident. Gold does not move because of hype. It moves because of fear, uncertainty, and distrust in systems people once believed were stable. Before we go deeper, this is FINSFAR, where we explain global finance, money, and power calmly and clearly, so you understand what's really happening beneath the headlines. Now here is the uncomfortable part. Gold usually gains power when confidence in paper systems begins to weaken, not when crises are already obvious. History shows this again and again. Gold rises before inflation explodes, before currencies weaken visibly, and before financial stress becomes headline news. That's what makes today so important. Nothing looks broken yet. Markets are still functioning. Governments still speak confidently. And that's exactly when gold starts sending its earliest signals. For younger generations especially, this matters more than price charts because gold reflects trust, or the loss of it, in governments, currencies, and promises. When gold starts gaining power quietly, it often means the world is preparing, not panicking. So here rests the question that should make you pause. If gold is regaining importance before anything seems wrong, what do the biggest players see coming that hasn't reached the public yet? And if history is repeating its first warning signs, how far into this shift are we already without realizing it? If gold is truly gaining power, the real evidence isn't found in daily price swings, it's found in behavior, and that behavior has changed sharply in recent years. Central banks, the most conservative and long-term thinkers in finance, are buying gold at a pace not seen in decades. These are not speculative traders chasing momentum. These are institutions responsible for protecting entire nations from financial shocks. At the same time, gold is holding its value even when interest rates are high, a condition that historically works against it. That alone should raise eyebrows, because gold usually struggles when cash pays more. Yet today, gold is resisting that pressure, suggesting that yield is no longer the only thing investors care about. Add to this the growing demand for physical gold over paper claims, and the signal becomes clearer. Trust is being reevaluated. When investors and institutions prefer something tangible over promises, it reflects anxiety about stability, not excitement about returns. This pattern appears most clearly during moments when the future feels uncertain, but hasn't yet broken into crisis. History tells us that gold doesn't wait for confirmation, it moves on anticipation. And anticipation is building now around debt sustainability, geopolitical fragmentation, and the reliability of major currencies. What makes these signals emotionally unsettling is that they're easy to dismiss. Nothing dramatic has happened yet. No system has collapsed. And that exactly why gold message is often ignored until it's too late. For everyday people, this matters because gold's strength often precedes shifts in inflation, purchasing power, and long-term security. When gold begins to gain power quietly, it's rarely about profit, it's about protection. So here is the question that should linger. If gold is rising, not because of greed, but because of caution, what does that say about how safe the financial system really feels to those who understand it best? If these signals are already flashing now, how long before they become impossible to ignore? Why does gold keep returning to the center of the financial world every time confidence begins to crack? To understand what's happening today, we have to look backward, because gold's role has never been random. It's cyclical. Throughout history, gold rises not during periods of growth and optimism, but during moments when systems become overstretched. In the 1970s, gold surged as inflation spiraled and trust in the US dollar collapsed after the gold standard ended. During the global financial crisis of 2008, gold climbed again as banks failed and governments rushed to rescue the system with massive money creation. Even further back, during wars and political breakdowns, gold became a refuge when paper promises lost credibility. The pattern is clear. Gold gains power when trust in institutions weakens, not when economies are thriving. What makes today different is timing. Historically, gold rose after damage became obvious. Today, gold is strengthening while systems still appear stable. That's a critical distinction. It suggests anticipation rather than reaction. History also shows that when gold begins moving early, the eventual adjustment tends to be deeper and longer lasting. This doesn't mean disaster is guaranteed, but it does mean stress is building. For younger generations, this lesson is often missed because gold is seen as outdated. Yet gold's endurance is exactly its strength. It doesn't rely on trust in governments, technology, or financial engineering. It relies on scarcity and belief built over thousands of years. That's why it keeps returning when confidence wavers. So here is the unsettling question history forces us to ask. If gold is behaving the way it has before every major financial adjustment, what kind of adjustment is the world quietly preparing for this time? And if the past is any guide, are we still early, or already deeper into this cycle than most people realize? At the heart of gold, in us renewed power, is one simple but uncomfortable idea. Trust is becoming more fragile, and gold exists for moments exactly like this. Modern financial systems are built almost entirely on confidence. Confidence that governments will manage debt responsibly, that central banks will control inflation, and that political systems will remain stable enough to honor long-term promises. Gold doesn't need any of that. It doesn't depend on interest rates, political decisions, or policy credibility. And history shows that when trust in these structures starts to feel strained, even slightly, gold begins to matter again. Today, trust is under pressure from multiple directions at once. Governments are carrying record debt levels with no clear path to reduction. Central banks are caught between fighting inflation and protecting growth. Geopolitical tensions are fragmenting global cooperation. None of these issues are catastrophic on their own, but together they create uncertainty. And uncertainty is gold's natural environment. What makes this phase emotionally powerful is that trust rarely collapses suddenly. It erodes slowly through repeated compromises and temporary fixes. Each solution buys time, but weakens confidence a little more. History shows that when people begin questioning whether rules will change unexpectedly, whether currencies will be diluted, assets frozen, or systems politicized, gold quietly regains relevance. Not because it promises growth, but because it promises independence from decision makers. For individuals and institutions alike, that independence becomes valuable when predictability fades. And here's the part most people overlook. Gold, yes, strength, doesn't to it mean fear has peaked. It usually means fear has just begun to form. So ask yourself this. If gold is gaining power while officials still speak confidently and markets still function normally, what does that say about the level of trust behind the scenes? And if trust continues to weaken bit by bit, how much more important does gold become before the rest of the world finally notices what is changing? If gold were only attracting private investors, its rise could be dismissed as speculation, but the real shift is happening at the highest level of power. Central banks, the institutions that shape currencies and stabilize economies, are buying gold at a pace that signals strategy, not emotion. These are organizations that think in decades, not quarters, and their actions matter more than their statements. When central banks increase gold reserves, they're not chasing returns, they're managing risk. They're preparing for scenarios where trust in paper systems becomes harder to maintain. History makes this clear. In moments leading up to major monetary changes, central banks quietly accumulate gold to strengthen credibility and reduce dependence on any single currency. That's exactly what we're seeing today. Countries across different regions, often with very different political systems, are moving in the same direction, and that coordination is rarely accidental. What makes this deeply unsettling is timing. Central banks are buying while public confidence still appears intact, which suggests anticipation rather than reaction. It implies they're planning for instability before it becomes visible. For everyday people, this matters because central bank behavior shapes inflation, interest rates, and currency stability downstream. When these institutions prepare defensively, it often means they see limits forming within the current system. Gold, in this context, becomes a signal of caution at the top, not fear at the bottom. And once caution takes hold at the highest levels, it tends to spread quietly through policy and markets. So here's the question that should stop you for a moment. If the very institutions responsible for defending currencies are increasing their reliance on gold, what does that say about how confident they truly are in the system they oversee? And if central banks are already preparing for a world where gold matters more, how long before that reality filters down to everyone else? At what point does gold stop being just a hedge and start quietly competing with currencies themselves? This is the line most people don't realize has already begun to blur. Gold isn't replacing money in daily transactions, but it is increasingly replacing trust at the reserve level, and that distinction matters. When confidence in currencies is absolute, gold fades into the background. When confidence becomes conditional, gold moves forward. Today, major currencies are still functioning, but they are also being questioned in ways that were unthinkable decades ago. Rising debt, persistent inflation risks, political polarization, and policy uncertainty all weaken the idea that any single currency can remain unquestioned forever. Gold benefits from this environment because it exists outside political systems. It cannot be printed, sanctioned, or rewritten by policy. History shows that when currencies face credibility pressure, gold's role expands, not as an alternative currency people spend, but as a reference point of value and restraint. This happened after the gold standard ended, when gold prices reflected declining confidence in paper money. It happened during financial crises when currencies were diluted to save systems, and it's happening again now, but more quietly. What makes this phase emotionally unsettling is that nothing dramatic announces it. There's no declaration that gold is back. Instead, it creeps into balance sheets, reserve strategies, and long-term planning. For individuals, this matters because gold competing with currencies signals a deeper issue: uncertainty about future purchasing power. When people worry that money tomorrow will buy less than it does today, they start looking for anchors. Gold becomes one of those anchors. So here was the question that should make you uneasy. If gold is quietly reclaiming its role as a measure of trust while currencies still appear strong, what does that say about how fragile confidence really is beneath the surface? And if this competition continues to grow, how much longer can paper systems remain unquestioned before the balance visibly shifts? Why does gold always seem to rise when the future starts feeling harder to predict? The answer isn't greed, it's fear, but not the loud kind people talk about. It's quiet fear, the kind that shows up in long-term decisions rather than emotional reactions. Gold gains power when people begin doubting not just markets, but the ability of governments and institutions to control outcomes. Today, that doubt is growing in subtle ways. Debt keeps rising with no clear exit. Political cycles grow more extreme. Global cooperation weakens, and solutions increasingly rely on temporary fixes rather than long-term stability. None of this causes immediate collapse, but it reshapes expectations. History shows that when expectations change, behavior follows. People stop assuming the future will be smoother than the present. They start protecting instead of expanding. Gold benefits from that mindset because it represents permanence in a world that feels increasingly unstable. What makes this phase dangerous is that fear doesn't show up in headlines. It shows up in preparation. Central banks hedge, investors diversify, governments talk confidently but act defensively, and the wider public remains calm because nothing is broken yet. This gap between perception and preparation is where major financial shifts are born. For younger generations especially, this matters because the future they inherit will be shaped by decisions being made quietly today. Gold's rise suggests that many powerful players believe the coming decades will be more volatile, not less. That doesn't mean disaster, but it does mean adaptation will be necessary. So here's the question that should stay with you. If gold is gaining strength, not because the present is failing, but because the future feels uncertain, what does that say about the path the global system is on? And if fear is already shaping long-term decisions at the top, how prepared is the average person for the world that may follow? Why does everything still feel safe if so many signals are pointing toward change? This is the illusion that forms before every major financial shift, and gold has a long history of exposing it. Safety today feels convincing because systems are still operating smoothly. Markets open, payments clear, and governments project confidence. But history teaches us that the most dangerous phase of any transition is not collapse, it's continuity. When systems continue functioning, people assume they will keep functioning the same way indefinitely. Gold challenges that assumption. It rises not because the present is broken, but because the future feels less predictable than before. In past transitions, this illusion played a critical role. Before inflation surged in the 1970s, life felt normal. Before the 2008 crisis, credit flowed freely and risk seemed manageable. In both cases, gold moved earlier than public awareness, signaling stress before damage became obvious. Today's environment carries similar traits. High debt levels are normalized, emergency policies feel permanent, geopolitical fragmentation is treated as background noise. None of these forces cause immediate fear, but together they undermine long-term certainty. Gold responds to that erosion. It doesn't predict timing, it reflects discomfort. For individuals, this matters because illusions delay preparation. When people believe stability is guaranteed, they fail to adapt until options narrow. Gold's quiet rise suggests that some participants no longer trust the illusion fully. They're not panicking, they're adjusting expectations. And once enough people adjust, systems evolve whether the public is ready or not. So here is the unsettling question you should consider. Are we mistaking the smooth functioning of today's system for proof that tomorrow will look the same? And if gold is already signaling discomfort beneath the surface, how long can the illusion of safety last before reality forces a reckoning? At what moment does preparation stop being cautious and start becoming a warning sign? History shows that this line is crossed quietly, and gold often marks the moment. When institutions, governments, and long-term investors prepare for uncertainty, they don't announce fear, they normalize it. Gold's growing role today suggests that uncertainty is no longer seen as temporary but structural. This is a critical shift. Temporary problems invite short-term solutions. Structural problems demand protection. And protection is where gold thrives. In previous eras, once preparation reached this stage, change followed. Not because people wanted it, but because the system could no longer pretend the risks were temporary. The uncomfortable truth is that preparation itself accelerates transition. When enough actors hedge, diversify, and plan for instability, they reduce dependence on the old system. That reduction weakens the system's grip. Even if nothing fails, gold doesn't cause this process, it reflects it. What makes this emotionally difficult is that preparation feels responsible, not alarming. No one is panicking. Life continues. But beneath that calm, assumptions are being rewritten. For everyday people, this matters because by the time preparation becomes visible to the public, choices are already limited. History is full of moments where early signals were dismissed because they didn't feel urgent. Gold's message is subtle but persistent. The future may demand more resilience than the past, and resilience often requires change. So here's the question that should stay uncomfortably present. If preparation has already become widespread among those closest to the system, are we closer to a major shift than most people believe? And when preparation turns into necessity, will there still be time to adjust? Or will the rules already be different by then? So what actually comes next if gold continues gaining power without panic, without collapse, and without headlines screaming crisis? History suggests the answer isn't a single event, but a gradual reshaping of how trust is distributed across the global system. Gold doesn't replace currencies in daily life, but it quietly influences how much confidence people place in them. If gold's role keeps expanding, it likely signals a future where monetary power is more fragmented, where no single system feels permanent, and where stability depends more on resilience than dominance. That kind of world isn't necessarily worse, but it is more demanding. It requires governments to manage debt more carefully, institutions to rebuild credibility, and individuals to think more long-term about value and risk. For younger generations especially, this matters because the system you inherit shapes opportunity more than effort alone. Gold's rising relevance suggests that the future may reward preparation over assumption. This isn't tea about fear or predicting disaster. It is about recognizing that financial history moves in cycles, and we may be entering a phase where adaptability matters more than blind trust. Gold's message is not that everything will break, but that the old guarantees may no longer be enough. And when guarantees weaken, understanding becomes power. So here is the final question you should carry forward. If gold is gaining power because the world is preparing for uncertainty rather than reacting to crisis, what does that say about the direction we're heading? And when history looks back on this period, will it be seen as the moment people ignored the signals, or the moment some chose to understand them early? This is FINSFAR, where global finance, money, and history are explained calmly and clearly, without hype or panic, so you can understand change before it forces you to react. If this video helped you see beyond the headlines, you're exactly where you need to be.